And yeah, so now here's an example of where I've actually gone into the courtroom and actually drew the proceedings, and of course the reporter would say to me, get pictures of this or get pictures of that, and so I would do a rough sketch, and then afterwards I go back to the television station and I would sort of finish the work there, right? So these are kind of some examples. And this kind of, you can see, was sort of a rougher one and didn't get quite finishing it. But this one looked quite rough at the beginning. And so one of the things I'd like to talk to you guys about is this idea that that drawing is going to be done in layers, and that you don't necessarily have to think about drawing in terms of it being perfect right away, but that you start off with a very rough kind of sketch almost, or foundation for the drawing, and then you layer on top of it. So that first initial sketch is going to have a lot of mistakes, and you're going to have to maybe restate line or redo things, and that's okay. That's just all part of it. Like, mistakes are kind of inevitable. It's not about preventing the mistake. It's more about what do you do with the mistake once it happens, because mistakes are always going to happen when you're drawing, whether you're drawing digitally or with traditional drawing material like pencils on paper or paint on paper. But in all cases, like, we are looking at layering things either digitally or layering things in terms of material-wise in the physical real world. And I think one of the things that we also want to think about is that line becomes a really important part of this in terms of establishing that armature or foundation for the projects that you're working on. And then this is sort of more of my recent work. Yeah, like this stuff is from like 2008, so it's quite old. But this is like something I've done last summer. So I work with performers, and I set up video projections and live feeds, and sort of create different scenarios that way. I just built the box that performers put their arms through it. So I work on some surreal abstract stuff too. But today's focus will be primarily on, in terms of working with the superheroes, and all the images that I'm going to show you today, I pretty well found online, and if you just Google how to draw the Marvel way, and then just go to images, you can find a lot of the images I'm showing you today, sort of go back to that. And it's a book that I actually bought as a teenager in the 70s, like, I was probably around your guys' age, 14, 15, 16 now, or older. How old are you? What grade is this? 10, 11, 12, okay. So it could be anywhere between like 16 to 18. So, but like I started looking at this probably 14, 15 years of age, and use it as a building block for my drawings. So one of the things that we'll do a lot of this today, or we'll focus on this a lot today, is this idea of the gesture. And if we notice that the gesture is what we're seeing here is that the bodies are not symmetrical. That you can see that in most cases the bodies are twisting. Yeah. So you think about the rib cage, like if you think about the skeletal kind of structure that everybody has, everybody's got a rib cage, everybody has a pelvis, everybody has bones in their legs, bones in their arms. But you can see that in all these poses, the pelvis is facing one way, the rib cage is facing another way, and so almost all the bodies are twisting. And then usually you've got like a right foot forward, and then you've got a left foot back, or vice versa. And that opposite happens with the arms. So let's say your right arm is forward, or pardon me, your left arm is forward, then your right foot is forward, and vice versa, right? But in a lot of ways, like, these are just kind of like sticking in, and then you just sort of like build on them. It's almost like you've got a wire, and then you're just putting some clay on top of the wire. So lots of different directions and ways the figure works and moves. that's one of the things I find more fascinating about the figure is that it's kinetic, and so it always looks different. And particularly if we start getting into body types and shapes, and sizes, and also viewpoints. But these are super quick, right? Like, and it's also about having fluid line, right? So it's not about sort of really going tick, 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 tick with the pencil, but it's like a swoop really fast, right? And you're just putting that swooping fast line down fast, and you keep putting it down until you feel you've got a line that works. So it is about restating the line a lot. Now today, like, we're going to start off with something that's very rough and build up to maybe a little bit more detail like this. Something like this we're not going to get to, but for the people, whether you're working digitally or whether you're working with pencil, you want to start to think about this idea that you've got a layer there. If you're working at pencil, you're going to start off very lightly, anticipating that eventually you're going to get a little bit darker and clean up and eventually start getting dark, getting more detail. And like I said today, because we've only got an hour, you're really only going to look at something like from here to there. We're not going to get to this point at all. Yeah, so here's another example of that. So we've got the crouching figure, very strong sort of flowing movements. But that essence of that movement is captured even in that first gesture drawing that the stick figures they start to build upon, right? And once again, that twisting of the body, right? So we're seeing that this arm is up forward more. So this arm and that leg are furthest apart. This leg and that arm are furthest apart. And then there's a twist in the body again. Same thing here as well. And the other thing we start to see is this reference to almost like creating tubes. And there's this reference to the rib cage in some ways. And sometimes that's going to be like an oval shape. Sometimes it'll be more of a box shape. But then anticipating that you're going to go into more of an organic form, since the body is like from nature and more of an organic shape. But sort of figuring out the direction of those tubes will be something to think about, right? So here's a great example here of like a Daredevil. I'm kind of excited about season 2 Daredevil on Netflix, and you guys are like coming up, right? What, 2 weeks or something? Like, he's looking at his watch. It's like any hour now. But with this tube here, so this is a leg coming forward, so we can see the front of that tube here. Whereas like we wouldn't see the bottom of the tube here, right? We would see maybe the top of it if that arm was on the leg, right? We see the top of the tube there, right? So positioning things. I mean, you don't necessarily have to draw the box in like that, but it's kind of good to sort of think about those things in the back of your mind. And then this idea that there's lots of different body types. I mean, you sort of think of the like a lot of the superheroes would be sort of like from that Eurocentric sort of background and certain types, body types. You start thinking about superheroes in terms of lots of different body types, and not having big, huge chests or skinny waists, or maybe not having that Eurocentric background, but maybe other more multicultural sort of backgrounds. I think of like something like the X-Men in the late 70s, early 80s, and we had like Thunderbird, who's like a Native American superhero, right? Of course, I think it's now much more diversified now. Like when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, well, I think now it's much more diversified now, and it could even be taken further. But, so here's an example here where we think about, we're not going to get this far, but this is one of those things where we can start thinking about like the perspective in terms of viewpoints. But like sometimes it's useful to break down the figure in terms of boxes or cubes or rectangles and spheres. And of course, we can see a different perspective points of view. So I think in some ways, like when I was here 2 weeks ago, I think there was this anticipation of of movements, and I think that in some ways this kind of sort of presents this idea best, I think. So this tension in the pose, right? It's like if you've got something here which really kind of presents that storing of energy that's about to burst out, and a storing of energy here that's about to burst out. Whereas here, you know, we start to see the figure more as vertical and less angles, less curvature, less twisting. And so the poses tend to be not that active here, or referred to as weak up here. But here again, there's still a basic foundation there in terms of, and it's like everything we can think of, the hands are kind of like mitten shapes at this point. So just thumbs and with heads, we can just think about the idea of just basic structures again, breaking down in terms of geometry and basic shapes. And when watching in terms of the viewpoint of the head. So for instance, from this viewpoint, suddenly the tip of the nose, the point of the nose, is very close to the eye line. Whereas like down here, look how far the nose is away from the eye line there. And we start to see more of the top of the head, so this part shrinks more. Where this point of view, we start to see underneath the chin, and we start to see that the forehead, top of the head, becomes smaller. Right? We know straight on that eyes are halfway between the top of the head and the chin, but as soon as we start getting into perspective, that changes things dramatically, right? So we start to see that lower view, we start to see more of the face and less the top of the head. The top view, we see more of the top of the head and less of the face. Now we're not gonna get into these issues today, but this might be interesting for those of you that are doing storyboards for film or for your animations. And this idea in terms of thinking about compositional choices or working with composition. Now I've divided up the panel here into two sections, and it's here again. This is straight out from How to Draw the Marble Way in that book. The red line divides the left side and the right side. So we see image 1, we see image 2. Now image 1, overall, like this side here is I would say in a lot of ways less dynamic in terms of the composition. Whereas this one, if we take a look, we can see a lot more angles and curves, and here again, there's that twisting the body that we were talking about. We don't see that here. Like here, it's more or less symmetrical. Whereas here, we've got the twist in the body. We've got one arm that's really far out in front, and then we got the other arm pulled back. And then we don't see like that thrust is also being emphasized by Captain America pushing forward more. He's angling more down, right? So just a little bit more tension and dynamism in that pose. Then we get to something like here, like this sort of boring profile view, but then we get this kind of really far more active kind of view, like where we can feel him kind of like moving from outside the picture plane into this villain or monster that they swing with a very strong punch. Even the way the monster's holding him there, like it's very kind of bland and kind of straight. Arm is really not doing much here, but here it's like the body is angling, and then the arm is kind of flowing down to help us connect down to the movements of the monster arms, and the expressive hand, and so all those things are creating tension. And then look at the stacking of the superheroes here, right? So the vision here, and the diagonals again, more of the ceiling showing. Here, you've got the strong curves of Iron Man and the sort of physical, or the not physical, but the movement and flow of that. Now, this is something else just in terms of other composition, other ideas. But all these are kind of drawn roughly, right? So we can think of this narrative of these two guys having a debate or argument, and this guy pounding his fist here. But if we look at there, it's a little bit light, but you can see like him pounding his fist is, it's almost like this guy's being sort of submitted and kind of, he's sort of seated back down. And then there's like this kind of clearly there's this strong disagreement, right? They're almost like ignoring each other. And they're doing that here, but the positioning and the composition here really kind of emphasizes that he's lighting a cigarette, focusing on a cigarette, and in some ways, like, he's thinking more about a cigarette as that guy's leaving and this guy's looking back and jerk sort of thing, you know. So that's it for kind of like with that. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to start off with a little workshop here, distant Photoshop, and we're going to photograph somebody again. Sure. Anybody wanna volunteer as be a superhero or superheroine?
Come on, somebody has to be a superhero.
All right, good. We got a candidate there.
All right. So let me get the camera first. The rest of you, open up Flash or Photoshop. Set up a new stage. If you had your principles of animation open, save it, close it down, open up a new stage. Because I'd like you to participate in this.
So,
because this picture has to go up on your Behance project, okay? So everyone's going to be doing this project. All right, so Paulo is going to do a superhero pose. Somebody give him a superhero.
so think about what I said in terms of like, you know, about the arms, in terms of like, you know, like you're gonna have
Ant-Man, Aquaman.
Wait, put your right arm back even if it's forward. Twist your body over. There you go. And do something else. Switch your legs, and your other legs are yeah, do that. So you can crouch down a bit more. And stretch your left leg back more. Yeah,
There we go.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, that's good.
See a difference there, right?
See if you can look at. See if you can look up at this truly. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
Okay, hold it.
Now, like one of the things,
All right,
one of the things about those poses is that they're really hard to do in real life, right? But it is about sort of animating that, right? Thank you, that was great. Yeah, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a layer here, and we're going to do maybe about 3, maybe 4 layers. Yeah, just it's so small. Okay.
Come on, walk these guys through. So open up Flash, set up a new stage. It doesn't really matter what size it is. It's just going to be a JPEG.
And I'm gonna go to my, you know, you can either use a brush or a pencil tool for Photoshop. I'm thinking like probably 4 pixels is probably good. Probably sticking to more of a sharper edge would be better too. Yeah, I think like that's good, right? I'm gonna go with that one.
That's awesome. Look at that.
That's great. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Way to go, Paulo.
Yeah, thanks.
I think we should put you up against Eric from the first class.
What I'll do is I'm gonna load it up into Photoshop. Looks good. I think we're gonna get a few things in terms of like we've got a lot of foreshortening, which would be good. We'll talk about the difference in terms of feet maybe a little bit too. Terrific. Okay, great. position in there and see the line pellets. We're good. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna start off with, so if any of you are using just paper and pencil, just try to think about that you're gonna start off with something light. I'm gonna pick a lighter color just because I don't want it to show up that much at the beginning. But if you're working with pencil, you definitely want to start to work lighter first. And so we're gonna go back to
Sibling there.
we're gonna go back to the PowerPoint here just for a second, and we just think about this idea of different layers. So we're going to begin with something like this, where it's sort of like just a wire frame, or even just like a stick man sort of drawing out the figure, and then we're going to progressively go to that. The idea is that you want to have the drawings go on top of each other. So this will go on top of this, and this will go on top of that. And so you want to start off very lightly at the beginning, and if you're in Photoshop and Flash, you'll just change the opacity in the drawing. Okay. Right, so first thing is Apollo, right? Yeah. Great. So I'm going to just like think about this in terms of everybody has a spine, everybody has a rib cage, everybody has a pelvis, everybody's got bones in their arms and their legs, and so we want to think about those kind of structures first in a lot of ways. And we're going to think about the torso area first. So, and you're going to just be very, very, very rough. And we're thinking about tilting the shoulders. Think about where the shoulders end. And then you got arms, elbow band, and there's foreshortening in both of the hands. We're going to be busy with that. Okay. And then he's pulled back. This arm is pulled back even more. You put it there. So there's my first mistake. I'm having to restate things. Sometimes it'll be like more than. And then the elbow, and then the hand. So here again, we're thinking about that mitten shape again. So like the plane that's there, and we don't really see too much of the top of the plane of the hand.
Do not worry about making mistakes, all right? There are no mistakes in working with art. Just try your best, and you'll be amazed what you can do by the end of the period.
Yeah, like what Mr. Leduc is saying there is I really want to strongly advocate this idea that mistakes are inevitable, and so it's about just sort of restating the line as opposed to getting obsessed with like Command Z or removing the last command or taking your eraser and making your. Just allow the rough lines to exist as they are, like we can see in the other drawings there, right? These are very, very rough. There's a lot of restating of line, right? Particularly when we get into like stuff like that, or even the earlier sketches I showed at the beginning, right? These things, right? Very, very rough. Okay. So we can start thinking maybe a little bit about like the hips and the pelvis there a little bit. Maybe you could throw in a rib cage potentially. You could think that the rib cage is probably maybe more like we're seeing maybe more of his right side, all his right side than his left. Whereas the hips are maybe it's actually the other way around. So we're seeing maybe even a little bit more of his rib cage on his left side and less on his right. Sorry about that. And then the opposite is happening with the hips.
That's a great
so maybe a little bit more of the hips on the right side and less on the left. And so what we're getting here also is a stretch in the body there. A little bit of a stretch in the body there too as well. And we're seeing, like, take a look and see a couple of things. First off, we can think of. Okay, the knees. So we've got one knee there, and then the foot is like way down there. But then we go to here, we have like another knee, which is, and this part of the leg is very foreshortened on us. And then we're seeing from the knee down to the foot, we're seeing that as quite long, right? Like it's almost as long as his body, because the body is foreshortened here. And then here, like, I think this part here, like the shin, like on his right leg, that's probably the only thing that's not foreshortened in the entire pelvis. Everything else is foreshortened to a large degree. And of course, you can see that the positioning of where the feet are quite different, right? So the left foot is up quite high, and the bottom foot is quite low down, right?
Excuse me.
Yeah. So let's stop with that one. And now what I want you to do is I want you to go into another layer, whether you're doing that in digitally or if you're working on a piece of paper. Working on a piece of paper now, you want to draw on top of this, but just make sure that this is lightly drawn. I've drawn this darker so that we can see it on the projector. But you know, for working with paper, you're definitely going to want to try and draw it fairly light. I'm just going to put his head into here, and we notice that the head is quite low, right? Like in terms of the chin is down, right? If we can see his collarbone implication probably there. You can see that his neck is below there too, up there. Okay, so I'm getting into it a bit too much. So I'm going to go into another layer here, create another layer. We're gonna sort of go on top of what we've done here. Am I going too fast? Is that good?
It's a bit.
What's that?
It's a bit fast.
A bit fast? Slow down? Okay. This class ends at 1:45, right? Is that right? 2 o'clock? Okay. Oh, we got lots of time. Okay, I'll slow down. Sure. Yes, we got 40 minutes left, right? So, yeah, so maybe I'll just, is everybody caught up now? We'll just maybe spend a couple minutes just trying to get to this point. Just maybe I'll walk around, just have a look, see how everybody's doing. So if we take a look at this, like we're anticipating that we're going to end up with a tube that's going to look something like that. Right? And then the tube down here, like the other leg, we're going to see the top of the leg, and it's going to go back and it's going to get very small. So that's the thigh here on the left side, and then the tube on the right. You can actually draw that in the next layer. Okay, I'm just going to go back in here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just lighten that layer a bit. So I'm just going to change the opacity, and we're just going to have the stick here just go some lighter. So kind of see it there, just as a kind of a basic shape. Okay. So let's go back now to that kind of structure that's there. So here again, I'm going to so here what's happening, right? There's a twist in the body. So you can see his right arm, he's pulled back that right elbow even a bit more. feel like we could have like Wolverine claws on or something. So get something like that. And we're seeing that, you know, that there's a lot of foreshortening there in terms of what's going on with the body. I'm just gonna select these and just get rid of these since they're distracting us. But we'll remember, you can leave them there in yours. Okay, so from this point of view, we're seeing that this arm is closer than this one. We're seeing this leg is closer than the one that's farther away, right? So you can see that this is closer, this is closer, this is further away, this leg is further away. Okay, so this is where it gets a little tricky here because we don't really see a lot of the top of the leg here. We do there, but not here. Here it's like I was saying before, we think about just maybe darken that just a little bit more so you can see it. What we got is like almost a, and I may reposition the feet a little bit here, but we'll see how it goes. So I think one of the things we're going to think about now is like that tube that we talked about, right? We're going to put it in place right there, so we can see that there. And then there's the rib cage there. And then we'll just put the pelvis there sort of as a box shape kind of thing that we're seeing. So we're sort of closer to this side of the pelvis. This side is sort of going back. And then this part is going to be kind of big. Let's see. What I'm going to do is then cheat a little bit here, and I'm just going to pull the layers up just a little bit, just so I have more room. So if you're a person doing paper, you won't be able to do that. Okay, yep. Okay, so let's think about what the tube is going to look like here. So we might see a little bit of the tube like going down, like where the shin bone is. We might see just a bit of it at the top, just a little bit. So it's like a kind of a compressed kind of circle there, right? Maybe about 58. And we'll bring it down. And then we'll do something like that. Is this slower now? Is this better, right?
That's good pace, yeah.
Yeah, a bit better. All right, and then so we get to the feet, and we're seeing not too much foreshortening on the feet, so that's good. I mean, maybe a little bit more foreshortening there than here. I'm gonna just change the positioning of the legs here a bit. So we got the tube in there. Nice expressive pose. Very, very nice. So this is like behind the pelvis area, but if we could see the tube, we would see it like we would see the top of the tube there, and then we wouldn't see the bottom of the tube there. Right? That's what. And then likewise here, we would see the top of the tube there, but not the bottom there. And so it gets very, very small and very compressed, right? And then this foot is actually up on the ground, but it's maybe gone a bit too long here. And so we're going to bring the heel back and up. Here, maybe I'll just do it like a large version of the foot here. I think like I'm doing the foot here, and I'm just going to do a big version of it there. So you've got the ankle area there, which we're kind of putting in as a and then the heel is not resting on the ground at all, right? So all the weight of that pose is on the ball of the foot here.
No one ever does this.
And there's like a little bit of a description in terms of the plane of the front of the foot versus the side.
Oh, awesome. Don't ever tell them.
I'm sort of breaking down in terms of geometry here. I'm not drawing actually what's there, but I'm just thinking about in terms of those geometric planes. How we sort of describe those things, right? So yeah, so we go into here, and I'm not going to worry about fussing with the detail there too much. I'm going to think about it in terms of a very basic kind of general thing, because this is the part that's farthest away from you, so you don't want to obsess on that too much. With the other foot, we're going to be a little more careful and maybe think a little bit more about what's there. So with that foot in front, we're doing more of the side again. But in this case, I think we're seeing maybe there's slightly a little bit more of the ball of the foot, and the arch is maybe not as elongated. It's not as long there, and so it becomes a little bit shorter, and we start to see maybe more of this part of the foot here, like that part there, a little more predominant. And of course, if we see the toes, we see the small toe and the big toe would be here. But then once again, like we're seeing maybe a little bit more of the front, maybe not as much as we are there. Maybe it's all the same. But we're thinking about those planes in the front and then the side. Just zoom in on that a little bit. See more. It's the other superhero pose, Spider-Man. Just gonna move that up just to have more sheets. Okay, so we're seeing more of the front of the foot. So we're seeing that arch, right? And then we're seeing maybe top of the foot there.
There's a clip in there, right? No. Yeah. This is also your Wi-Fi.
We're seeing that shape, like, you know, the big toe and the other toes are kind of like, they're going to stick out more than the little toes over here. So it's kind of like a,
What's this for here? When you open this, what's this for? What is that over? Because I know some kids are pulling in. Is that for USBs?
how are we doing? Do we need more time with that? You guys are doing okay.
That's your pendant trash. Yeah, that's your PC. Yeah. Perfect. Awesome. Okay. That's what I was missing. Now you're busy. Okay.
We check all yours. Yours all have them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we
Thanks.
want to keep in
Thank
mind that right leg is going to, you know, it's going to be pretty big, right? So you want to leave yourself room for that right leg. Like, take a look. If we measure that, so just put a little line on the foot back. Follow there. If we just measure like that length, like from his knee down to his heel. And then if we take that measurement, let's look how long his body is in relation to that, right? So that's how much the perspective is affecting us, right? So this part of his body is, that leg area is really quite close compared to the rest of his body. And that's what causes that disorder to be so large. And of course, we're seeing that this becomes very small in terms of the length there because there's a lot of foreshortening. Okay, so now I'm gonna go up to the upper parts of the body now. Just make our canvas here just a bit bigger. Okay, so we can think about the tube aspects of this. You know, we might think we can even think of the shoulder as like sort of a ball. The shoulder here is kind of a ball, and then we can bring the tube down there. And so now we can think about like, okay, so there's the shoulder there. I've used the tube in like the bicep and the tricep area. And you don't see the bottom of the tube, right? See the top of it there. And then the opposite's going to happen here is some foreshortening here. So we're going to see the forearm is in front of that, the bicep and tricep area. This becomes very foreshortened. All right, we're seeing the tooth there, and we don't really see any information for the wrists because both the hands are actually blocking our view of the wrists. The other thing that's going on here, and I'm just going to zoom in on Paulo here a little bit. Is that we really only see the front plane of that hand. You can see maybe a little bit underneath the knuckles here, just slightly. And we see the fingers bending here. There's a knuckle bend there. So we see the extension of the finger there. But for the most part, with all the fingers, we only see this plane, that plane, that plane, and that plane. Little baby or pinky finger is kind of like the only thing that kind of goes beyond that first plane of the finger, right? So that's something we'll think about when we're drawing that. So and overall, I'm going to think about the scale of that too. So I'm thinking about the length of that in relation to width. Throw up a little thumb there. Also foreshortens as well, right? We're seeing like, you barely see the top of the nail there. We're seeing more of the underneath of the thumb and the front of the thumb there. Just gonna zoom up on that. Okay, so there we are. So we got the little thumb there. And if we think of hands, actually, like the hand, this is what's so fascinating about nature, and I think the body is from nature. So the hand, in a lot of ways, is made to kind of like hold a ball. It's not it's sort of as we sort of think about the knuckles, we can think about that in terms of like, it's sort of rounded, right? And so this knuckle is out furthest. And then the hand starts to taper back down. Am I going too fast or is that good? Good. And we made a judgment call there in thinking that the first two knuckles are just a little bit, just slightly bigger than that. But the other thing that's to keep in mind here is that these three fingers are all kind of from the same point of view, right? But we get to the little finger, and suddenly that viewpoint of the finger changes a lot. And we start to see more of the side of the finger versus just the front of it. Here we see the front, here we see the front, here we see the front, but there it's like the side and the front. All right, so let's make a decision. So say like, okay, I think that the second finger is going to go approximately there. And then we're going to get to this finger here. We're seeing that this knuckle here is back a little bit more than this one. We don't really see just a little hint in the photograph here of like that second point. The other knuckle and the fingers, but for the most part we've got something like that. There, there. I'm going to go to even a darker color at some point, but right now we're just kind of like the front. Thinking that maybe the fingers might be a little bit big up at the top, but look at it a little bit. All right, there's that other structure there, right? So there's like the top of the finger, then we can think of the side. I'm almost getting a little bit too geometric with it, but this sort of helps us put that line off. So there's our kind of our hand. So I leave that there, and then I go on to the next one. Yeah, I'm going to the next one. It's similar in a lot of ways, just more of a mirror. Take your right hand, take a fist, and okay, we can see it from this point of view. But look at your fingers in terms of the profile view when you look at it like this. Your right hand, right? So you're now looking at it like this. You notice that the finger that's closest to the thumb is out further. You guys see that in a lot of cases, right? You say yes? So what's going on there is that there's a slight foreshortening of that finger there because of that. Right? See that? And then it starts to flatten out as it goes back. But there's an angle there where that's coming out at it a bit, so that's one thing you can think about. There's a very slight indication of the wrist here too as well, which is helpful. All right, so before we get into the hand, let's just go down and break down the arm again and look at the basics of that structure. Okay, so think of the tubes again. You would see the top of the tube there. We wouldn't see the bottom of the tube there. Get that in. So it's going back into the space. Remember, this arm is back further than the other one, right? And then this is going to overlap here, even though the sweater is doing the opposite of that. But we put this. What's interesting here is that we start to see like, well, you can see the top of the tube there, but then of course the wrist is covering that. Right? And then you got the row of knuckles. And here again, that same knuckle is the highest we can, right? And then we start to curve down. So the first knuckle is there, second knuckle is the highest, and then we go down. And so the top or back of the hand there, we don't really see that much of it. There's like a little bit there, right? But most of it disappears. And then we've got that structure there, which is connected to the thumb, so the top of the hand there where the thumb is. And there's some joints there, right? If we take a look at our thumb, you might want to do that now, just your right hand now for a second. Take a look at the fact that we've got two joints there, right? And there's kind of almost a webbing between the finger, the pointing finger, and the thumb. Right? So we're getting a lot of foreshortened versions of that, all of that there, right? Okay, so there's that joint there. Right? Then there's the other thumb joint there. And guess what? That kind of like lines up with that first finger. I'm feeling like maybe my hands are a little bit wide. So we may have to maybe adjust that pretty much a little bit. We may have to put another color through that. So we're anticipating that, like you said, that finger's going to come out a little bit. It covers part of the thumb, but the thumb is still sort of sneaking out behind there, right? And then there's the other part of the thumb there, that thumb there, and all the other stuff that's kind of going in there. But that part of the finger is lower again. And then it starts to flatten on us there with the other two fingers, okay? And we're seeing a little bit more of the top of the hand there than the bottom here. So we're getting just a very slight, subtle kind of stacking effect where this finger is in front of this finger is in front of that finger, and then this finger is going to be over. Okay, so there's our basic kind of figure there now, right? We could start to think about. Okay, we got 14 minutes left.
Let's go with 10.
Yeah. Okay. So we could think about the face a little bit. I'm not going to necessarily do a portrait here, but we will talk about the basic structures here. In the three-quarter view, and it's interesting, right? Like we're seeing that from his nose down pretty well is below the shoulder. Right? That's one thing to think about right away was the head. But if we go back to the slideshow again, like those pictures of the heads we showed, where are they? Right here. So if we think about that structure in terms of, we're seeing a three-quarter view, so it's sort of like that, kind of. One tool. So. I've already drawn those like way down here. There. Thinking about. I'm not doing the eyebrows. What I'm doing is I'm doing the plane shift of the forehead to where the eyes are going to go. So there's a plane there in terms of the face. Another plane there. And we're seeing a 3/4 view, so this part of the face becomes very, very small. And it's still drawing the head, still even too high up. Go in there, just select it. That's probably better than that. But really, instead of copying the photograph here, I really want you to think more about those sort of geometric structures that are there in the head. So if you think about this, in terms of that being a plane, and then top of his head being a plane, and then the side of the head being a plane. Right, and we get the cheeks a little bit, that, and the jaw. Am I going too fast again? Is that good?
That's
How
good.
we doing?
It's good. Yeah.
Yeah, he gave us a nice big smile, right? Is that nice? So sometimes we'll have like a little thing there for the lips, above the lips, so we'll just do a little kind of like this. Now, 3/4 view, we're going to find that this side of the lip is longer,
He gave us
this
a
side
nice
is
smile.
shorter. But overall, because when we smile, we'll sound like the lips kind of stretch. But overall, we're seeing that the right side, his right side of the lips is longer than this side. Now, in terms of teeth, you don't want to put a lot of detail in. You just want to kind of hint to it. And that may be all we need. And then for the bottom lip, it's the same thing. So this part is very small, and then this part is kind of larger. You're getting probably into too much detail. The more basic structure, like in terms of the plane of the chin here. See, even I can't help myself. Sometimes, like I jump into detail way too fast. I kind of did that there, right? You kind of want to restrain yourself from trying to do that. And then the ear is something that's very, it sort of pulls back there, right? And so ears are very interesting. They're very sort of great kind of curves. Sometimes people have big earlobes and some people are small. And so the other thing that's going on here is that because we're viewing it from slightly top view, we're seeing the ears are slightly higher than the eyebrows. Usually that's not the case for most people. You look up at them straight on, your ears are going to more or less line up with your eyes. But because of that top view, that's creating a perspective where we've got like a kind of a linear kind of description there, right? Which means they're kind of curving across and across. We won't worry about the hair. We know he's got a full head of hair. He's got bald head. That's long here. I'm kind of jealous. I didn't get into line weight here, but we could think about this line being maybe a little bit thicker, just to push that forward a bit more. Other line maybe broken or thinner. When we start to maybe connect things a little bit more, like we think about things like, okay, so this leg is going to come forward even a bit more. We could emphasize that a bit more. Think about the kneecap there, perhaps, like there's a bone there, and then the other bone that comes after that. The shin bone. Try to think about that a bit. Yep.
Just let me pull the plug. You guys look like you're enjoying it so much. I do apologize. I have to cut it down. Like normally they would listen for like 10 minutes. You kept them captivated for the whole hour. That was fantastic. Thank you very much. I think we should give Derek a big round of applause for his something for you, Derek. And actually, I'd like to get a big group photo as well. If we can, maybe all superhero poses up in the front. Yes. Oh, looking for the camera. Very good. That's good deal. Even though you have a.
Yeah.
You have to think that. Okay.
All right.
Okay, come on, walk. Superhero poses they follow. Can you do the pink pin? Go to the pink pin. Oh, okay, now I know. And Spider-Man, look at that way.
Zarina, go. I'm not.
Vertically challenged people to the front. Looking at the field. You're in the front. You're in front. Awesome. Okay, now we definitely like a couple people down in the front. There we go. Yeah. All right, good. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Very nice. Okay, let's do some superhero pose. Okay? Your best superhero pose. Let's do those muscles. Ready? Or Sailor Moon or something. Sailor Moon. 1, 2, 3. There we go. That was action. I like it. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Back it up, please. No, you can't do our class. No. We're all done.